Okay, what are you saying, people, and welcome back to my channel. Now today I've got a weekly forex analysis for you guys. So on the screen are the pairs we'll be looking at today. But before we get into that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also leave a like on the video if you're feeling generous. If you haven't already, make sure you follow me on my Instagram. I'll leave the handle there, posting a lot of different trading setups and also my own journey and different tips and tricks to help you guys on your forex trading. And also check out my Telegram channel, leave a link to that in the description, posting different forex updates there, different trade setups throughout the week, and you don't be missing out on that. So make sure you go check that out, links in the description. But like I said, people, we've got another weekly forex analysis, so let me stop talking and let's get into the charts. First up, we've got Euro USD. Okay, so for USD this week, we saw a nice push to the upside. I was actually expecting to see a push to the downside for USD this week. However, we did not take out this critical area of support. As you can see, price was kind of ranging, moving sideways above this area. I said, if you do take out this support, I think we can see a nice move to the downside. However, you can see we did not take out that support. Price tapped into this area of resistance and actually just charged straight through it. So price overall is still looking very bearish here. We're coming into this area where we just had that double top not too long ago. So I'm expecting to see a bit of a bearish reaction. But on the other hand, I do think USD is likely to eventually break through that resistance and see a bigger move to the upside, because looking from the higher time frames and the weekly chart, it looks like we could be seeing potentially a higher low formation. As you can see, if you look at the structure, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. So this potentially could be a higher low. Obviously, it's not confirmed yet, but if it is a higher low, we can be expecting the market to continue this bullish momentum to the upside on the weekly, and that should give us a new high, or at least go and test that high around 1.23. So we have this really strong level of resistance here that I was actually expecting the market to give us that move to the upside from a few weeks ago when we had this slightly bullish candle. However, as you can see, we did break through that area of support there. However, we're right back above it now, so treating that as a bit of a false breakout. And if you see the market pull back, hold that 1.19 level, I think we could be seeing a bigger move to the upside for USD if you do stay above that 1.19. So price right now is looking very, very bullish on the weekly, potential higher low formation. So you know what that means. Price is probably going to continue to the upside, back to the highs eventually. So with that information, bringing that down to the low time frames like the daily for hourly, we can expect to see a bit of a pullback to confirm that as support shows that price can't break through that level, and then we expect another move to the upside. So looking at the hourly chart, like I said earlier, we're back in this area here, which was our previous double top. So again, expecting to see a bit of a bearish reaction. It'd be nice to see a push back into the 1.19 level. That key weekly support shows that price is struggling to break through that, and if we do hold into that, I do see a nice move to the upside back into that double top area. And if you do break through it, then we can see a bigger move to the upside. And next target will be around this area here, prior resistance, which did send us to the downside around 1.21. So if you do clear this resistance, next target will be 1.21. However, right now we're kind of stuck at that area. As you can see, we're already seeing a little bit of rejection from that resistance. So expecting to see a bit of a pullback, a bit of exhaustion. And if you hold this support, I will be looking for buys for USD, expecting to see a bigger move to the upside for this pair. Next, we're going to take a look at USD JPY. Okay, so next up we've got USD JPY. So for this pair, we saw a nice move to the downside this week. I did say last week for USD JPY, a move to the downside looked quite likely, since it does look like we had a bit of a false breakout of this resistance here in the market. So as you can see, really key area of resistance, big push to the downside, so a lot of momentum from that same area. We broke above, broke back below, so I said potentially that this move in the market was actually a false breakout just above, catch people on the wrong side of the market, and from then we can actually expect the move to the downside. So last week we actually got back below that area, holding as resistance, and as you can see on the 4-hourly time frame, we maintained that throughout the early stages of this week, and then we actually collapsed to the downside and saw a really nice move back into this area of support. Well, technically we haven't really reached that support yet. I would still say there's a little bit more downside, a bit more room to the downside for USD JPY to really tap into that support, but nonetheless we did see that move to the downside. So now two things could happen for USD JPY. Either we hold this area of support and we see a little bit of a range going between that support and that resistance, or we actually break through that area and see a bigger move to the downside. And now we have to even take into account the higher time frames here, like the weekly. You can see we do have this weekly trend line of prior resistance, but will now be acting as support. So you can see here in the market, we've got 1, 2, 3, had our fourth, broke through it, and now we're actually retesting that as support. So it depends what JPY wants to do on the weekly time frame, which could really indicate which way we should be trading in for next week. So if you do hold this trend line as support, we can actually see that support there on the low time frames hold and actually see that move to the upside. However, if you do take out that trend line and close back in, and this would potentially be a big false breakout there of that trend line on the weekly. And if with that information, we'll probably expect to see this support break, hold as resistance, and then we can look for ourselves and seeing a bigger move to the downside. Because if this is a big false breakout on the weekly, we can actually be expecting to see the market fall all the way to the downside, potentially, but even potentially back to these lows all the way down there if it is a false breakout. But right now we're kind of testing that area as support, so not too sure whether we'll get that reaction or not. But again, staying on your toes, seeing what happens with price action around this area here, looking at the daily, the 4 hourly, the hourly, seeing if we're rejecting that level. If we are, we're probably holding that weekly trend line as support and could be looking for that move back up to that level. However, break through that weekly trend line, break through that support, hold as resistance, big move to the downside is very likely. And next we've got USD CAD. Okay, so for USD CAD this week, as you can see, not too much happened. Price action was very choppy this week. Price slowly roll over to the downside. I did say last week it does look like price is rejecting this area here in the market. Key level of support and resistance around 1.26200. I said if we maintain to hold that, we'll probably see a move to the downside back into this area here in the market. So we did see that move to the downside. So going to the 4 hourly chart, you can see a nice area of support there. Resistance at that support gave us a nice move to the upside. So we did hold that area, expecting to see a move to the downside. However, price is moving very choppy here, very corrective. So I do think we'll probably hold this area for next week and could actually see a move to the upside. However, if we don't hold that area and we see price start clearing the area of resistance and of support, and holding as resistance, then the move to the downside is very much on, very likely. Back into these lows here, and actually probably a lower low at that point, because if I do jump back onto the daily, you can see the structure of the market is still very bearish here. Market's making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. So this potentially here could be our lower high in the market, and from that we could actually expect to see a lower low. So for that to happen, we do need to take out this support here, which kind of just tested it a little bit last week towards the end, and looks like we're coming back in for another test this week. So monitor price action in this area. If price is struggling to break through, showing signs of rejection, some bullish price action, then you could be looking for those buys back into 1.26200. As you can see, the market keeps wanting to test that area. So if you do take out that, if you do hold that support, we'll probably see a move into that area. However, if you start seeing strong bearish momentum breaking through that area, holding as resistance, then the move to the downside is very likely. And at that point, I feel like we'll probably make a lower low, taking out that level and just continue that overall bearish momentum that we are seeing for USD CAD. So critical level, monitor price action, see what happens, hold it and move back up to 1.26200, hold it as resistance, move back into the lows, and at that point expect a new low. Up next is Euro GBP. Okay, so next up we've got Euro GBP. So for this pair, not too much happened. As you can see, price is just consolidating around this area here, and you can see exactly why price is doing that, because if I jump to the weekly time frame, I would take this support level, bring that across, you can see it's holding as resistance, and you see this week ended slightly bearish from that reaction from that weekly support term resistance. So price is still holding onto that area. I did say last week that I do expect to see a move to the downside from this resistance. However, we didn't really get that move to the downside, since price is kind of still struggling at that resistance. So I feel like if you do take out this support here, because we have taken out this trend line here in the market, so if you do take out that support, I think we could be seeing a nice move to the downside back into this area here in the market, which was our price support. Bit of a false breakout here, nice push up, did not retest it, so we could still push back and retest that area if you do take out this area here in the market. So take out that support, hold it as resistance, could be looking for those sells. or maybe if the market was to push back here, show some more rejection, could be looking for some sells there as well, anticipating that move to the downside. So I feel like Euro GBP does have a good opportunity of moving to the downside as long as we stay below 0.87, which is this key level of resistance. Take out that resistance, we could actually see a breakout to the upside and a bigger move back into 0.88. So need to be aware of both possibilities. I'm still favoring a move to the downside for Euro GBP and a move back into around 0.85400. So key support that needs to be taken out for that trade to really have that confirmation, although you can still be looking for shorts here, because if your stop loss is above those highs there, price will probably move to the downside if the setup is correct. If it was to push up any further, the setup was wrong to begin with. So you can still be looking for some shorts here, but then the higher probability would be a break of that, a retest, and then the move to the downside for UGP for next week. Okay, so up next we've got AUD USD. Okay, so now we've got AUD USD. So for this pair, we actually got moved to the upside this week. Price was struggling to break through that resistance, 0.76500, for quite some time, and I was actually favoring a move to the downside for this pair. However, we failed to break through that trend line, and price kind of just slowly broke to the upside. Then we had that big push taking out that level, and our price is looking very, very bullish now for AUD/USD. So I did say if we do take out this 0.76500, I do feel like a move back up to 0.78 is very, very likely, because as you can see, when the price is trading in between these two levels, we do get a nice range, price moving from one level to another, back and forth until we get that breakout. So it looks like the market keeps giving us those breakouts. We're back above that level, so I do expect to see the market continue to 0.78. So there's either two ways this happens. It's either price has a pullback back into this area, hold it as support, and then gives us the move, which again could be a really nice opportunity to look for longs from this area here, because again the risk to reward is a lot better. Or we take out these highs here in the market, and then we see them move to the upside here, which we probably need to scale down to the lower time frames to really take advantage of that move, because right now price is still looking bullish and it doesn't need to have that pullback back into that level. It can still trade slightly sideways in preparation for that move to the upside there. So I do feel like 0.78 is a nice target for AUD/USD for next week. Again, could be seeing that move to the downside first, which will be a better trading opportunity, because again we got more pips to catch to the upside. But right now AUD/USD is back in that range for this pair. I think another move back into 0.78, and again if we hold that as resistance, the likelihood is probably get another move to the downside. However, take out this resistance here completely, I feel like we could be seeing a bigger move to the upside and price back at these highs here, which again probably a bit more of a long-term analysis there. But if we do clear that 0.78 level and hold above it, there's a good probability we'll probably find ourselves back at those highs, back at 0.8, and potentially even a higher high. So for next week, expecting to see a move back up to 0.78. Be nice to see a bit of retrace to the downside back into this key level of support here, and then look for those buys there. But do be aware that price might not want to give us that move, might consolidate, range a little bit more, and then give us the move there. So need to stay on your toes again with that move. But biases to the upside for next week for AUD/USD. Might see a pull back into 0.76500 first, but I do think the target is still 0.78 for this pair. Now let's take a look at NZD CAD. Okay, so for NZD CAD this week, as you can see, we had a big push to the upside for this pair. You can see it really well there on the 4-hourly chart. We failed to take out this area of support in the market, which will probably give us a nice move to the downside. If we took it out, hold it as resistance, another would probably expect to see another continuation to the downside. Because as you can see, we have this impulsive leg. This is our retrace, and probably expect another impulsive move to the downside. However, we did not take out that support, and price gave us a really big move to the upside. So price right now is looking very, very bullish. We're coming back into a very key level of resistance here in the market. Price support all across here. Term resistance held this consolidation and actually gave us a very big move to the downside. So we tapped back into that same level. As you can see, we already had a bit of a bearish reaction, giving us a bit of an engulfing candle there on the daily chart. So the market right now is having a bit of a reaction to that level. We do have that support that price is tapping into here for a drop to the 4-hourly time frame. So if you look at the consolidation, this was our support for that consolidation, that range, and now the market is holding that area right now. So we could see a bit of repetition of what happened there which could happen again now. If you do hold that area, just another push to the upside and a bit of consolidation between those two levels. If you do clear this resistance here in the market, I do feel like we could be seeing a bigger move to the upside and see price actually tap back into this area here, which was our previous swing high when we were holding this area as support. So I do feel like clear this level of resistance, so a breakout essentially will probably have a good chance of moving back up to 0.91, which is that resistance up there. However, right now it does look like market will probably give us a bit of a range first before we do get that breakout, or we could actually break up to the downside. And if that's the case, I do expect us to see us tap back into that area there, prior resistance where we had that double top. However, price didn't actually retest that level, so that retest is still very much a possibility. So if you do clear that support, there's a good chance we'll probably come back and tap into that area again and see a move back up. So for NZD CAD, we're in an area where potentially a range could happen. So potentially could be looking to trade from support to resistance. But if you do get a breakout to the upside, you know we are favoring a move back up to 0.91, and a break of that support will probably favoring a move to the downside back into 0.888. Next up, we've got GBP NZD. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to GBP NZD. So for GBP NZD this week, as you can see, we had a really nice move to the downside. I did say last week we are favoring a move to the downside rather than to the upside for this pair. We had this key level of support here in the market that we did break through last week, and I was saying we could be seeing a nice retest of that level to hold as resistance. We were trading around that area, so a nice push to the upside to hold that as resistance, then the continuation back to the downside. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened for GBP NZD. We had a nice push to the upside, held it as resistance, and then we saw that nice dump to the downside back into this area here of support. So the market right now is looking a little bit bullish here. We did take it out, however we closed back inside of it, so a bit of a false breakout. So price could actually see a bit of a push to the upside. If I do take the high of that range and just bring it across, I do think the market has a good chance of filling that range after this impulsive push back above that level. So expect to see a little bit of a retrace back into that area, hold it as support, then give us a move to the upside to fill in that range. So a range between around 1.92500 and the resistance around 1.94500. So I think the market will probably fill that range a bit, fluctuate between those two levels. A breakout could take us a lot further to the downside, potentially even to around this level here, which is around 1.91. So take out that support. I do feel like prices has a good probability of moving back into 1.91. So if you take out this support like so, hold it as resistance, and then the move to the downside. As you can see here, we had a false breakout. So price wasn't really holding that as resistance. So if you do see the market start holding that area as resistance, then we can get in some shorts, looking for a move to the downside. Stop loss above that level, of course, looking for a move back into this level here, 1.91. And at that point, the market will probably start looking very, very bearish here, since we did fail to take out that previous high here in the market. So I just take that across. You can see we wicked above it a couple of times, but essentially did fail to break it through that level. And we're coming into this trend line here in the market. So again, first, second, third, fourth test. So if you were to have that move back into 1.91, probably have broken through that trend line at that point, and probably start to see a downward trend here and start to see a bigger move to the downside. So need to be aware of the higher time frames there, but right now market is back above that support. So I'm favoring a little bit of a pullback for next week, a nice push to the upside back into 1.94500. Next, we're going to move on to CAD JPY. Okay, so for CAD JPY this week, not too much happened. I was favoring another push to the upside for this pair, then another move back down, since we were looking quite bullish towards the end of last week. Again, we do have that key weekly resistance just above us here, so if I just take that across, 88 key level of resistance, as you can see, holding that level there, and a key level of support here, which price did not retest. So I'm still favoring a move to the downside to retest that area eventually. However, as you can see, price is having a hard time pushing down. So I was expecting to see a push to the upside this week and then a move back down. However, price did not do that. Price kind of had a move to the downside and then consolidated a little bit. I believe we are still holding this trend line here intact. As you can see, support. I've tested it a few times, and it looks like the market is having a real hard time trying to break through that support. So I do think if we clear this area here in the market, we'll probably see a little bit of a continuation back to the highs, back into 88, and that should probably give us either a retest of this high or a new high. Again, this area is a weekly resistance, so there's a lot of range between that area, so we can still move into this area of resistance on the weekly and then still get a reaction despite making new highs past that level. So right now on the 4-hourly chart, we've got a bit of a range between this support and that resistance. We do have the trend line running through, so it could actually slowly trickle us to the upside, so that's why I'm favoring a move to the upside now for CAD JPY, breaking through that resistance, holding above it, then a move back into that resistance and potentially even a higher high. So for next week, expecting a move to the upside. However, we do need to take that resistance because price is kind of just consolidating and price is kind of hanging on to that trend line. However, if we do break to the downside, then we'll probably start to see a bit of a reversal there, and a break of that trend line could actually take us all the way back down to that support there on the weekly and start giving us a bearish trend. So we're kind of at a key level right now for CAD JPY to see what happens with that area. Again, if you look to trade the lower time frames, could look to take advantage of that support and that resistance and trade between the range. But if you're looking to catch a bit more of the swing, again, a break of that, a retest could give us a nice swing back to the highs, or on the contrary, on the opposite, a break of that, retest of the trend line or retest of that support and resistance could give us a bit of a bearish trend to the downside back into that weekly support. So two possible setups there for CAD JPY. However, I'm favoring the move to the upside rather to the downside, since we're having such a hard time breaking through this trend line and breaking through that support. I do feel like we'll probably even see some new highs, not next week, maybe the week after, for CAD JPY. Up next is GBP USD. Okay, so GBP USD this week, we saw actually a push to the upside. However, I was expecting to see a push to the downside for GBP USD, since we did take out this trend line here in the market. So I was expecting to see a bit of a bearish trend now, as we can see lower highs, lower lows here. However, we did fail to take out this critical support here in the market, which did give us this big move to the upside. So GBP USD is starting to look a little bit bullish now. We are coming back into a key level here in the market. So it is interesting to see what happens with this level. As you can see, support, 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 resistance, bit of a false breakout, resistance again. So if we do take out this level and hold it, I do feel like we'll probably see a bigger move to the upside back into 1.4, which is this key level here of resistance. As you can see, we had a bit of a range between these two levels, broke to the downside, false break above. So if you do break above this time and hold it as support, so retest it, as you can see last time here we had a big move to the upside and a big move back down. There was no retest of support, so clear false breakout, hence why we got this big move to the downside. So if you were this time to get a move to the upside, come back down, hold it as support. Now I'm feeling that move back into that resistance 1.4 for next week and just filling that range for GBP USD. We do have this trend line here as well in the market, which will cause a bit of a struggle, a bit of a bearish reaction. So again, that could potentially send us back down. So that will be the opposite setup to what I'm saying right now. So if you do hold that as resistance, which we're testing right now, plus the trend line, there's a good chance we'll probably see it move to the downside and see the market move in the opposite direction and start a bit of a range between these two levels here in the market. So you need to be aware of that. But again, the market is trading in that area there, very key level. So again, monitor price action there for hourly perspective, see if we're rejecting it or if we're breaking through. If we do break through, that trend line will be now acting as support, and that could give us a nice move to the upside. However, again, if it does act as resistance, we'll probably see a move to the downside back into that support and just continue the range there for next week. And next we're going to see what's happening with GBP CAD. Okay, so for GBP CAD this week, again, not too much happened. Price is kind of holding a key area of support, hasn't really moved away from it, but is showing signs that we are holding that area of support. So last week we did see that bearish close below. I did say potentially could see a breakout to the downside and a bigger move back into this key area here on the daily time frame, because again, very key support. If you probably did take out that area, we did have a clear path all the way back down to these lows here. However, as you can see, price did not really take at that level. On Monday we closed straight back above, and then we had a few wicks to the upside, but then eventually price did hold that area of support. So now I'm actually favoring a push to the upside for CAD JPY as we are holding that area. We do have a little bit of a trend line here in the market, which is causing a few wicks to the upside. So might see the market do a bit of this action here, but a break of that trend line, I do think we'll probably see another move back into this resistance here in the market, which is around 1.74225. So key level resistance there, and I do think we'll probably see another move back into that area since we are holding this strong daily support, and again probably see another test of it for a fourth time, potentially a breakout, but again we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And if you do see a breakout next week, keep this level here in your minds, because that's probably the next area price will probably find some resistance at. So a breakout could be into that level, but for now we are looking like we're holding this level. Now I'm expecting to see a break of that trend line and another move back into that resistance. Again, a break of that support. Like I said last week, we can still see a bigger move to the downside back into that key level there on the daily. So again, nothing really has changed from last week. We're kind of just holding that level right now. So that move to the downside is still on if you were to clear that level of support. However, it does look like we're holding that area of support now. So I do expect to see a little bit more consolidation, a break of that trend line, and then move back into that key level there of resistance for GBCAD for next week. Okay, up next we've got GBP JPY. Okay, so for GBP JPY this week, I was expecting to see another move to the downside for this pair, since we were holding below kind of a key level here on the 4 hourly time frame. As you can see, clear level support, resistance, support, giving us big moves when we do test this area. However, this time we didn't really get that big move. Price is now kind of just moving sideways, consolidating, struggling to really push through. As you can see, we have this support here, which price is really struggling to push through there. So it does look like we are holding that level there, and now prices have actually got this confluence of this trend line now. As you can see, first test back here, second, now we had our first test. So potentially we could be actually just seeing price making higher highs, higher lows, because if you do take a look at the price action here, we have this high, new low, new high, new low, new high, potentially new low. And if it is, because we are testing that trend line, I say if you do clear this level back again, I think there's a good chance we'll probably see price back into this resistance up here, and potentially even a new high, just keeping on that bullish structure we're seeing on the higher time frames. Again, monthly, weekly are very, very bullish still, so we can still see a continuation in respect to those higher time frames. But right now we do have a little bit of a range between this resistance and that support. As you can clearly see, price kind of moving sideways, struggling to break through that support and break through that resistance. But it does look like market is holding on to that support, because we do have that additional confluence of this trend line here in the market. So that will probably provide an extra kick to the upside, rather than this side just having that resistance. So I am favoring a move to the upside for next week for GBP/JPY, but again, critical resistance that we need to break past. And if you do it, hold it as support, I think GJ has a good possibility of reaching that resistance. Probably not by the end of next week, because it is quite a substantial move of around 230 pips, so you might not actually reach that area by the end of next week, but there's a good chance we could be on our way to that level there. So biases to the upside for GBP/JPY for next week. Again, critical resistance we do need to break out of. However, if you do see a bigger move to the downside, probably see a bit of a reversal at that point, and at that point I'll probably be favoring a move back into that support, same like last week, and then the next target after that will be this support here, which is where the trend line is based from. So two levels there you could be targeting if you were to see a break to the downside. However, for next week, I am favoring a move to the upside for GBP/JPY, back into those highs up there, but we do need to take out that resistance and maintain that respect for that trend line. And up next, we're going to take a look at gold. Okay, so for gold this week, we saw a nice push to the upside. Price was moving a little bit sideways to begin the week off. However, as you can see, we had a big push to the upside. Price maintained this area of support here in the market. As you can see, resistance, support, false breakout, retested it, and then we had that big push to the upside. So price right now is looking very, very bullish here for gold. And I did say if you were to get a break of that resistance up here, there's a good chance we're moving to 1770, which is that key level of daily support, which we did break through not too long ago, and we did not see a retest of. So there's a good possibility we were going to tap back into that area and retest it, since we did get that double bottom here in the market. So respecting that double bottom, taking out that neckline, and that push into 1770. So right now price is looking very bullish. However, we are coming to that resistance where I do expect to see a bit of a reaction for gold, because again, it's a very strong area. You can see we did get this big move to the upside from that same support, so it does have a lot of weight behind it. So I'm expecting to see a bit of a bearish reaction now for gold coming into that area. So it dropped back to the 4-hourly time frame. You can see we do have this price support here in the market, which I do feel like the market could actually make its way down to go and retest again, because again, very strong area of resistance there on the daily. However, if you do take out that resistance and actually hold above it, so confirm it as support, so break above that area, confirm it as support, I think we could actually be seeing a bigger move to the upside and eventually seeing gold come all the way back to these highs here and potentially a bit of a reversal. We do have this trend line here in the market connecting those two previous highs there. So again, first, second test, we could actually be seeing a third test of that area, because if you do look at this trend line here in the market, we had 1, 2, 3, so we could be actually seeing the third test of that trend line there and just complete this kind of descending channel pattern of price testing the lower trend line and then completing the range by moving to go and test the upper trend line. So get above that level, I think we could get that kick from that support level. Since last time we did test it, we actually went to go and test that same trend line. So if you do get above it, hold that support, again, we could probably see a bigger move to the upside and test that level. Again, a bit more of a long-term bias, but if we were to do that, again, you know the direction we should be trading in if price was to hold that level of support, because just taking those pullbacks and eventually riding it to hit that trend line. But right now we are holding that level as resistance. I do expect to see a bit of a push to the downside, but if we were to get above that level next week, you know we are favoring that bigger move to the upside for gold. And last but not least, we've got Bitcoin. Okay, and last up we've got Bitcoin. So for Bitcoin, we saw a nice push to the upside. Price almost tapped into 65,000, which was my target. However, we got up to around 64,800, give or take, before we saw this big dump to the downside. So price is looking quite bearish here for Bitcoin. Again, it does look like market is running out of steam. You can see we're starting to get this very strong bearish move to the downside now. So it does look like the market is soon running out of steam. We're going to see a bigger push to the downside, a bit of a deeper pullback. As you can see, we did take out this trend line here as well. So price is starting to look bearish. I wouldn't say we're going to see a bigger move to the downside now for Bitcoin right now, because again, we still do have this higher low here, which we could potentially hold and actually send us all the way back up to highs again. So need to be aware of that. Pay attention to the structure of the market and actually see what the market is telling us. So right now we are looking very bearish here. I think if we do manage to get ourselves back above this level here in the market, I do think we'll probably see a bigger move to the upside back to those highs and potentially going to hit 65,000. However, if we do hold that as resistance, if we do hold this level as resistance and actually take out this support here, which was a higher low, we could actually see the market push back into this key level of support here on the daily. As you can see, support there, big move, support there again, big move. So take out that support here, hold that resistance. We do have a good probability, just following the structure of the market, to see a bigger move back down to 44,000. So need to be aware of that if you do take out that support there in the market. See, jumping onto the 4-hourly time frame, the market is still looking very, very bearish after having these impulsive moves to the downside. So we could either see the market just simply retrace these pulse moves back up again, another push back up, hold that as support, and then the continuation, and at that point again back to highs. However, if you do have a hard time breaking back above this level, show resistance, break below that support, then you do have a good chance of moving back to 44,000 at that point for Bitcoin. So again, need to be aware of both possibilities. But again, if you do clear that support, I think Bitcoin is probably just going to continue its bullish journey back up to highs. Okay, so that is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed that and found it useful. Again, if you have any questions, agree or disagree with my analysis, make sure you drop a comment down below and I will get back to you guys. But thanks again for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys later.